3, 2, and 1. Yeah, live, sir.
Hi, good afternoon, viewers. Welcome back to this session of live this week. Last year we had excellent response. About 1,000 of you had come in wanting to seek clarity on the situation that we are sailing through. It's been a little over a year since COVID pandemic struck us, and we're still finding answers. We still are not clear where we are and what are the answers for several questions of ours. This session today is exclusively to seek clarity from an expert who knows this field and would give us a bit of direction on what we need to do to save, to be safe and to stay safe ourselves and our family members. So let's directly get into the question answer session. What I'm going to do today is I will read the questions that were posted last week and we'll try to answer those questions on priority. And if your question is not already answered by those questions, I would urge you to post these questions and we will try to get them answered for you today. So let's, without any more time, let's get into the Q&A session. Welcome, Dr. Nandini, once again. Welcome to the show and thanks for spending continuously 2 weeks of 1 hour each for answering questions to our group employees. Thanks once again. So let's get into the question.
Sure. I'm happy to be back. Actually, last time I think I had to leave without answering a lot of the questions because, well, times are tight for us also. So today I've actually kept my time a little free so that, I can do justice to whatever I started last week. Since last week, I think in this last week alone, we've seen a huge spike in cases. So yesterday in India alone, we've seen 3+ lakh cases. So that is the highest one single day case that any country has ever seen across the waves from 2020 onwards. So situation is not great. It's definitely grim from where we are seeing it. A lot of the states are actually suffering from huge shortages in medicine and oxygen. Well, medicine doesn't worry me because many of these medications are not very highly proven to be life-saving, except maybe the dexamethasone, some of the steroids. But a lack of oxygen is something that is really plaguing the nation at this point. Hopefully, we will tide over that crisis very soon. It's not so bad in Tamil Nadu where I live. We have to brace for impact because we have not seen this ever. So a lot of the things that we are seeing now are absolutely new for all of us healthcare workers, as well as you, as well as all of us public at large. So some of the positive things that we are seeing in the last week is a few more vaccines have been approved for use in India. Many of the foreign vaccines which already have FDA approval, emergency use authorizations are now going to be available for use in India as well. So we can expect that Pfizer, Moderna will also come very soon. So those of you who have not been vaccinated yet, and those who, right now, if a lot of the supplies have run out in some places for Covishield and Covaxin, you can also have other options at hand to choose from. And as far as variants are concerned, well, I said even in my last lecture that there is a lot of possibility that these RNA viruses, they mutate all the time. That is, their nature is to mutate. There are certain variants of concern that are gaining more importance because they're much more infective. So there is a new variant in India which has been identified. It's been given a name also, that is the B1617. It is said to be slightly more transmissible. Probably that is not the only reason for the second wave. There are a lot of reasons for the second wave. I think we've discussed this in the last lecture also. So they're multifactorial. Personally, I feel it is the lack of regulation by the government. See, last year we had blanket lockdowns, which may have caused a lot of harm overall. But in terms of number of cases of COVID alone, that was what protected the numbers from going up beyond 1 lakh in a single day. But this time it's not even possible. I'm not saying that the government is not doing what it should be in terms of not having a lockdown, but not being there and a lot of public gatherings happening, that has led to this huge spike that has kind of gone out of control at the moment. But anywho, for the average person, I think it's again important to know that the only way to prevent getting infected, prevent mutations from happening, prevent transmissions, it's always again the same two things: the same masking, the same transmission, the same social distancing that you've been doing last year. This time just do it a little more effectively, because no age is spared, no person can be spared by the second wave specifically. So it's important to stay indoors as much as you can, and even indoors, if you have any suspicion that someone is sick, please mask up. Even indoors, it's important to mask up. Right now, there's no one here, so I'm not completely masked. As soon as someone comes in, I will have my guard up. And take the vaccine. So these are the three arms that you have at your disposal. That is masking, social distancing and sanitizing, that is two together, and vaccinations. As soon as you get your hands on the vaccine, please take it, so that at least you won't die of COVID. It may not prevent infections 100%. That is what we are seeing. A lot of people come back positive with first dose, very soon after the second dose. I think the Indian ICMR has released some data on how many infections have actually occurred even after the second dose, but all of them have been mild. There have not been any deaths after a full course of vaccination. So that is the positive news that I can really share with you guys. So I think with that small introduction, we will go straight for questions, so that this time we don't miss out on anybody's queries. So
thank you, Doctor. Thanks for the update for the last 1 week. Yeah, we do have a lot of questions. In fact, I'll begin with a couple of blanket questions, which I would think cover several of queries that are there on people's mind. If how long does the coronavirus stay on a surface? So that's one question that's been repeatedly asked.
That is, not of much relevance. Surfaces and objects and inanimate objects it may stay on it for some time, 2 hours, 3 hours. It doesn't really matter, as long as you're doing hand hygiene very often. Okay, like whatever you touch every often, if you're doing hand hygiene, if you're not, that is what will protect you ultimately. That's not what you need to be worrying about. What you need to be worrying about is being in the vicinity of people in general. Okay, it is much more possible that you get infected from someone who is infected around you, who may or may not be showing symptoms. So there is definitely asymptomatic transmissions that are known. That is what you need to be worried about more. Everything else you can take care of with just hand hygiene. So if you have a sanitizer with you, alcohol-based hand rub, the objects and this stay, how many hours does it live? There have been a lot of experiments to see how long it will stay alive on plastic surfaces versus steel surfaces. It's not really important in terms of epidemiology, in terms of number of infections. What is important is that you are away from people who may be potentially infected, especially in an indoor environment which has poor ventilation. It's okay if you're in a large room with a fewer number of people and it's very well ventilated, there's not much of a problem. If it's a poorly ventilated indoor environment, that is where there is a higher risk of transmission from one person to another, rather than objects.
Yeah, and another blanket question which I would like to ask is, of course, you covered it in your last week's presentation and the question answer session as well. A small note on, because I'm sure people will want to know which is the best vaccine I should go for. So better to repeat it today once.
I think in light of the latest evidence that we have, again, both the vaccines that are available to us at the moment, Covaxin and Covishield, are equally good. Between the two, I won't say there is any one that you should choose more. In light of the newer papers on this clotting issues that are happening, they seem to be happening more among younger individuals under the age of 30, so especially women. So young women, first of all, it's a very, very, very rare side effect. It's 1 in 100,000. So out of 100,000 people, if one of them, if they get vaccinated, one of them, especially the younger a woman might get a clotting a disorder. Compare that with say 100 or say even 1,000 people getting COVID, there is a significant percentage who will actually suffer from clotting issues. So the risk benefit of getting COVID versus getting the vaccine, complications due to COVID versus complications due to the vaccine, there is absolutely no relationship between those two. It's huge. So it's definitely not something that should prevent you from getting the vaccine. But personally, I would say that for anyone above the age of 30, it is absolutely the same. Either Covaxin or Covishield, whatever is available to you, go for it. But if you're a woman under the age of 30, since the data has come out like this, probably if you have another option, it's okay to take the other option. Otherwise, there's no difference. We have had so many of our healthcare workers under the age of 30 getting vaccinated with Covishield initially, because Covishield is much more available, right? So even if you look at the overall numbers in India, I think 11 crore plus individuals have received Covishield and about 2 crore have received Covaxin. So generally, it's easier to get your hands on Covishield. And a lot of our healthcare workers have been vaccinated, even though they're under the age of 30 and women. We've not seen any complications due to the vaccine like that. Across India, there have not been any such specific clotting disorders reported, but now it's there in the public domain. So if you're under 30, if you're a woman, if you have another option, go for the other one apart from Covishield.
Okay. So I'll get into the question of last week. Post-vaccination, how long can a person donate blood?
Okay. Are you asking for convalescent plasma or generally for blood donation for any other company?
Not part of the question.
There's yeah. So there's no cutoff like that. There's no reason why you should not donate blood after vaccination at all. There's no recommendation against it. If you're asking about convalescent plasma, well, as a treatment modality, there is currently no evidence to suggest that it's actually useful. There is evidence to suggest that convalescent plasma is not useful. There was a large-scale multi-centric trial by a lot of the hospitals in India as well. That was the ICMR trial, which actually showed that there was no benefit of giving convalescent plasma. So it's really been given up as a modality. Although, you know, in the papers with the second wave, when it hit, you see a lot of patients who are scrambling to get plasma. I think it's a little unfortunate. It should not happen that way. It's more or less given up as an effective treatment modality. So otherwise, for any other indication you want to donate blood, there's nothing preventing you from doing that after a vaccination.
Sure. The next question is from a person who says that his family completed the first dose of vaccine and they got fever. The question is, will it happen after the second dose too?
Okay, you mean as a vaccination side effect?
Yes.
Yeah, it could happen. Usually the side effects are more common after the first dose. After the second dose, it's usually nothing. People don't have any side effects most of the time, but you can still have. So I think I mentioned in my last this one as well that it's more related to the intramuscular injection. So if you've received other intramuscular injections in general, there will be some local inflammation. It could be some fever for some people. And, you know, the body is also mounting an immune response. That itself, the body will have some external signs like a fever or this thing. So I would say that with the second dose, the effects are much lower, but it's not completely zero. You can still have a fever after the second dose, but it's nothing to worry about at all.
Okay. Can antibiotics be taken after the vaccination?
For the fever after vaccination, antibiotics, no need at all.
Okay.
Absolutely no need. Only paracetamol, nothing else is required. Nothing else is required. If you have a lot of body pains also, usually 650 mg of paracetamol is all that you need. You don't need to take antibiotics. Antibiotics are meant for treatment of bacterial infections. So the fever that you get after the injection is not an infection. It is just the body's inflammatory response to the vaccine. So there is no role for antibiotics at all.
Okay. So the next question is, my colleague is found positive and I was in close contact with him. For the last 7 days, I have not had any symptoms. Can I consider me not infected?
If it has been only 7 days, if you want to consider yourself uninfected, you should probably get a test. Okay, so you should get yourself tested. If you're negative, fine. Else, if you don't want to get tested, give it another 7 days. So 7 days is the quarantine period. So give it another 7 days for yourself to quarantine before you come out saying that you're completely uninfected. But if you want to go back to work for any reason which is inevitable, or you want to go back into the out of isolation, at day 7, if you get yourself tested and if you are negative, that's fine. Else, if you don't want to get tested, another 7 days of quarantine is what I would recommend.
Okay. If someone at home has COVID, can other family member who tested negative take vaccine after a week?
Yeah, if you are not currently symptomatic, there is nothing to say that you should not take the vaccine after a week, especially. So if even after a week of exposure, if you're still asymptomatic, you can still take the vaccine. But there is a small chance that after the dose of the vaccine, since you have already been exposed, you might still suffer from symptoms, but that doesn't prevent you from taking the vaccine as long as you don't have symptoms at the time of taking the vaccine.
Okay, doctor. The next question is, even after 6 months of getting COVID infection, we still see some issues like cramps, headache, forgetfulness, and sleeplessness. How long will it take for this to reduce?
So actually, this is we've seen this in the first wave. Of course, now it's too early in the second wave to say that. We call it long COVID. There are some people who, even after recovering from COVID, have some sequelae that we call, especially in terms of these, disturbances in sleep and breathing difficulties and forgetfulness. Of course, that is very rare, but it is also considered as one of the symptoms in that syndrome that we call as long COVID. There's no specific time where you will completely recover. You will just recover with time. It can take time. 6 months is actually the maximum that has been described for long COVID. Beyond that, you would start getting better and better. I mean, it's just something that you need to watch out for. Do therapy and physiotherapy. That sort. There's no treatment for that as such. There's no drug that you can give it to these patients. They will just get better with counseling and with therapy over time. So it's a very rare side effect actually. Especially for someone who has suffered from very severe illness, been in the hospital, had a lot of lung damage, which kind of affects oxygenation to other organs at that time. So there's some time that these organs will take to recover completely from that insult. So it's just a wait and watch, do therapy, do things that you would like, and you'll slowly get better.
The next question is, I was tested positive on 2nd April and 14 days quarantine is over now. But now I have occasional cough and slight headaches. What does it mean?
That is quite common to have. As long as 14 days are over and you've not had any fever in the last 2-3 days, you're safe to come out of isolation also. That's not a problem. Some people will have that cough and this thing for some more time, another 2-3 weeks. That is completely okay. Nothing wrong with that. As long as you've not had a fever in the last 2-3 days, you can go back to work and go back to being around people.
Okay. If my CRP is 17.5 but RT-PCR is negative, do I still consider myself as COVID positive?
See, CRP is an inflammatory mark. Like I said, the body can have an inflammatory response to a lot of things. CRP will just tell that there is some kind of inflammation happening. CRP is not a diagnostic test for COVID or any other infection. CRP is measured in patients who have arthritis. It's measured in patients who have autoimmune disorders, who have infections, just to see whether the treatments are working, what is the progression of the disease. So CRP is not a diagnostic test for anything. So if you have measured your CRP, 17 is mildly elevated. I won't say it is a very high value, but if you are still symptomatic and if you feel that you might still have COVID and RT-PCRs are not absolute tests. They suffer from around, they only have a sensitivity of around say 60-65%. So in one go, it is possible that the test has missed your diagnosis. So if you are really concerned about it, you can get the test repeated, but don't go by the CRP alone.
The next is there any food which has to be avoided when COVID positive?
Food?
Yeah.
Nothing like that. It's nothing
Okay.
related to food. You just eat healthy as usual. Be in the best possible health that you can. That is what is important.
Okay. Can
There's
a
nothing
person,
specific that you need to eat or avoid eating during when you're suffering from COVID.
okay, there's another popular belief that the second wave is more airborne, and based on that, there is one question which I think which should become a generic question again: is a
Yes.
cloth mask protective, or should we wear only N95 mask?
If you are comfortable wearing an N95 mask, well and good. But what we have generally seen is that people don't comply very well with N95 masks. It's very difficult to continue wearing an N95 mask for beyond 2 to 3 hours. So in terms of efficacy, N95, there's no doubt that N95 is the most effective mask, right? But then it's very difficult to wear. So usually people will just pull it down, and it's it makes the whole idea of wearing a mask useless. So this new paper that came out in Lancet was actually an opinion piece. Some of you have read it. It's very good. I think there was a news item which had blown it out of proportion also. This is not new. It was not unknown. So you have certain infections like, say, influenza, which spreads by droplets, larger droplets alone. We always knew that COVID is not like that. It's definitely a little more transmissible than influenza, probably because it is not solely only droplets. That is why there was always a lot of emphasis on indoor air quality, and that kind of emphasis is usually not there for influenza, right? So it was always, COVID was definitely more than droplets, probably less than airborne. So a truly airborne infection is measles or chickenpox, for that matter. Chickenpox, one person gets it in the house, everyone in that classroom or that kid's classroom, so many people will get it at the same time. COVID was never that transmissible like chickenpox, which is truly airborne infection. But it's somewhere in between droplet and airborne. So this new paper giving rise to questions of whether you should be wearing N95 all the time is a little, I would say that the timing was unfortunate. There's nothing wrong with that. It's correct only, but it's not new. This is something that we always knew. So what I would say is that you should wear a mask at all times, irrespective of what it is. If you ask me for exact numbers, N95 is 95% protective, cloth masks are 65% protective. But you're more likely to be wearing a cloth mask for a longer duration of time rather than an N95. So whatever you're comfortable wearing, if you're wearing it properly at all times, that is the one which you should go for.
Okay, doctor.
I hope that was clear. I mean, what I'm trying to say is balancing compliance of mask usage with efficacy.
Absolutely. Since you used the word, ironically, the next question is on efficacy. What is the medical interpretation of the word efficacy? Is it probability of not getting infected?
You mean after vaccination? Correct.
Sorry, it's not part of the question.
I think so. I think that's what they would have meant, because so usually when they do clinical trials for vaccine efficacy, there is a large population that is selected, and they get randomized. So they will consent, say 20,000, 30,000 individuals, and they get randomized into either receiving the vaccine or a placebo. Placebo is basically just saline, which is not vaccine, right? So for example, 10,000 people will get vaccine, 10,000 people will get placebo, and then they are followed up for varying durations of time, usually 2 to 3 months after 2 doses, right? So, and then they will see in this 10,000 how many people got COVID, and in this 10,000 who got the placebo, how many got COVID. If in the 10,000 who received vaccine, say 20 people got COVID, and in the placebo group 100 people got COVID, so it shows that the vaccine actually reduced 80 cases just by vaccinating those 10,000 people. So that is how efficacy is measured. A lot of people ask whether it is antibody measurements. So actually that is not the thing. So efficacy is, this is how it is measured. It is what is the incidence of disease in those who get fully vaccinated versus incidence of disease who are not, among those who are not vaccinated. So that is how efficacy is calculated.
Okay, doctor. The next question is, can a person aged 78 suffering from cancer go for vaccination?
That is something that you'll need to okay from your treating physician. The only contraindication for vaccines is if you are immunosuppressed at the moment. So not everyone with cancer will be currently on immunosuppressive medication or immunosuppressive chemotherapy. So it depends on the kind of chemotherapy that you're taking. Actually, the benefit of taking the vaccine is much more than the risk. So actually, these vaccines are they are just subunit vaccines. They are just a small part of the actual virus, and they are not live vaccines. So generally with live vaccines, we kind of we say that people who are with cancer and all should not take it, but COVID vaccines are not like that. So usually they are safe even for cancer patients with who are on chemotherapy. But then for an individual case-to-case scenario, it is you need to get you need to probably consult your oncologist and get his or her okay before you go ahead and take the vaccine.
Okay, the next question was for a person who was taking immunosuppressant, but you have already answered that in this question itself. And yeah, okay, this is another question which again keeps cropping up for the last 1 year perhaps. What are the precautions while sanitizing vegetables and provisions? I think some are still doing it. So I think you need to.
Yeah. Just don't, it's not, I think, I've already said it many times. So objects carrying the virus and giving you an infection, it's very, very rare. So when you're handling vegetables and say packages from outside, just wash them the way you usually do and wash your hands and wash the vegetable. That's it. You don't need to disinfect vegetables, or in fact you'll be causing more harm than good if you use harmful chemical disinfectants on vegetables, right? So just like you would usually wash the vegetables, and if you're getting any packages, just the outer packaging would be probably might have somebody who sneezed on it directly or something like that. You just throw it away and use whatever is inside. So there's no need to obsess over these things. The more important thing is to be masked and be socially distant.
Okay, doctor. Now I think with that we've completed the last week's questions. We are jumping into the questions that have come in live. The first question is from a person who says that he or she is a chronic allergic sinusitis patient, 32 years old, had a severe breathing problem and was diagnosed as asthma again after usage of steroids. 16 injections in 4 days. The question is, can he or she get vaccinated once the slot opens?
I'm sorry, there was some disturbance in between. 16 injections of steroid, when was it taken?
For
the asthma, was it recently?
Yeah, it was about a month back.
A month back, not at the moment, right? Not currently.
No, not currently.
And the concern is whether they will be allergic to the vaccine also.
Yeah, whether they can go for the vaccine or not. Is it okay to go?
Yeah, so the only contraindication for the vaccines in terms of allergy is if they have had any reaction to another vaccine in the past. So yeah, so seafood allergy, peanut allergy, protein allergy, all that does not prevent you from going ahead and taking the vaccine. There are certain products which are used in most of the vaccines, adjuvants and salts and those things that will be part of the vaccine to stabilize it. If someone is allergic to any of those things, that is the only reason why you should not take the vaccine. Otherwise, it's completely safe.
Okay, doctor. The next question is from a concerned parent who has a 1-year-old baby and says that his or her parent, Mr. Murugesh, his parents got affected with corona 2 months back, and now they've had the first dose and they're going to go for the second dose. His concern is about him hearing about several deaths after vaccination. So he's concerned about it.
It is not several. I think of late there was a very prominent personality who died 1 day after vaccination. It is just very unfortunate, but there was a definite other cause for that mortality, and it was not the vaccine per se. So, for someone who has a complete blockage in one of the major arteries of the heart, that was going to happen any day. It has nothing to do with the vaccines. It was just really unfortunate, but then all of the deaths that have occurred post vaccines get documented as adverse events following vaccination, and they are all investigated. And finally, there is definite data to say that it is not related to the vaccine. So my parents also got vaccinated. Even though we heard of all this news, I still told them to get the vaccine because protection that the vaccine gives is much more than the very minuscule risk associated with vaccination.
Okay, I think with that you answered Anurag's concern as well. He seems to say that vaccine have only emergency use approval and not 100% sure how much these vaccines are efficient. So I think you answered it already with the other earlier question.
I think I pointed to that in my lecture last week also.
That's right.
So how trials in general have been fast tracked and authorizations have been issued quickly. This is a pandemic situation. If you want an FDA approved vaccine or an ICMR approved vaccine, you have to wait 5 years. If you're willing to do that, well,
Yeah.
That just, yeah.
The next question from Mr. Venkatramana is fluctuation in BP and sweating a side effect of Covishield?
Some people have experienced a sudden. See, that's again a very rare thing, and it's not a very dangerous thing. You would have heard of people getting any injection and having something, fainting spells and those things. It's not something that you should worry about before taking the vaccine itself. Definitely not something that should worry you at all.
Okay. Another generic question, because I'm sure that I'll be seeing them as I go along. On Remdesivir, what is the importance of Remdesivir? Is it part of protocol for treatment?
So Remdesivir was one of the antivirals that has undergone extensive trials from the beginning, in last wave, everything. There was a huge solidarity trial by the WHO, which included multiple nations, thousands of patients, which ultimately did not actually find any great benefit for Remdesivir. Okay, there are just anecdotal reports of how 1 or 2 patients did well with Remdesivir. So, but you can't really go by that because then you don't know how they would have done without the drug. Actually, the data that we have on Remdesivir is not very encouraging. It's not a wonder drug. A lot of patients, unfortunately, think that Remdesivir will be a life-saving drug. Actually, it's not true. We see so much on TV also now, especially in Bombay and Delhi. Patients are running after Remdesivir, trying to buy from black market and whatnot. It's probably unnecessary, and there are only few indications where Remdesivir is actually needed, and the doctor only can decide. It's not something that you can just go and buy over the counter, and it is not at all meant for people with only mild illnesses or moderate illnesses. It should be taken only by a certain group of people for whom it is prescribed, still early on in the disease with severe symptoms. So this unfortunately, there's such a lot of sensationalism associated with Remdesivir. It is unnecessary. It's not a great drug. That is what all the data says.
Okay. No. The next question is, I am 50 years and have taken the first jab of vaccine on 23rd of March and then tested COVID positive on 16th April. Let me know when I can take the second jab after recovering. What should be the gap? Okay.
So there is no clear-cut guideline on when you can take it. The government of India recently released this thing saying that if you had COVID, you can take the vaccine 4 to 8 weeks later. But for this, after first dose, for those people who got COVID, again, there is no guideline as such. The same 4 to 8 weeks is being that is what I can tell you. But it is okay if you've taken Covishield, you can still delay it till 12 weeks. So usually Covishield second dose 8 to 12 weeks is what the WHO recommends. So I would still say that if you've taken first dose Covishield and then you got COVID again, if you've tested positive now 14th April, right? So give it another 12 weeks from 14th April and take the second dose.
Okay, doctor. Since you spoke about remdesivir, there is also a mad rush for oxygen. We see it all over the news and stuff like that. And what we again see on several, the WhatsApp University keeps telling us about the prone position breathing and the effectiveness of it. What is your opinion on that?
The prone positioning is all an intervention which is done in the ICU. It is not that just because you have a fever, you lie prone at home and it's going to help. It's not like that. Prone positioning is a treatment modality which is taken up, which is done in the ICU as part of ventilation. So prone ventilation and all, they are all procedures that are done in the ICU and closely monitored. So that's not something that you can do on your own.
No, because people
Oxygen,
try to
the rush for oxygen
levels. Yeah, the saturation levels go up when you do prone position breathing.
Correct, but then that's not something that's not an intervention that is suggested for anyone to do at home.
Okay, doctor.
If your oxygen levels are dropping, obviously you'll be in the hospital and the doctors will do what is necessary. If they think that proning is important, then they will do it.
Okay. The next question is, my mother-in-law aged 70 has tested positive. Her results came after 4 days. Her pulse meter readings are 99 oxygen and 100 pulse. Today we again gave RT-PCR samples, but results are available only after 4 days. We are continuing the medical kits. What are the other precautions that we should take?
Just to clarify, she's tested positive 4 days back, is it?
Correct.
That's what. Okay. And then why did they repeat a PCR now? Because she was okay, is it?
Perhaps so, because that.
Irrespective of that second result, it can be positive or negative. The first test was positive, so for all practical purposes, you can take it as positive only. And if she's doing well right now, very well and good. But of course, keep on monitoring her for at least 10 days from the day of her first symptom. If she's okay till day 10, there's nothing to worry about. Usually, people who tend to have this dropping oxygen and difficulty in breathing, it can happen around day 7, day 8 of the first symptom. So if that threshold is also crossed and she is okay, then there's nothing to worry about. She has made an escape.
Okay. The next question is pretty interesting. Is it safe to use smokeless tobacco during COVID-19 vaccine?
Oh, I'm probably not the expert, but there's no contraindication against smoking and vaccination. Absolutely. So you could probably use both.
Okay. The next question is, what are the chances of reinfection?
Not zero. So the immunity that you can have after either a vaccination or an infection, to the best of our knowledge, is for 3 to 6 months. So after a full course of vaccination or after getting infected with COVID, for about 3 to 6 months, you are protected. Beyond that, you can definitely get reinfected. So there's nothing to say that you can't get reinfected. We are actually seeing quite a few people who got infected in the first wave last year, coming back with symptoms now and testing positive again. So it's certainly not zero, especially beyond 6 months. It's a definite possibility. So even if you've been vaccinated, you've been infected before, you should continue masking and social distancing until.
Hello, Archana, are you there?
Yeah, sir.
I guess there is a
connectivity issue.
Drop in the connectivity. Viewers, request you to kindly hold on. I believe there is an interruption at the doctor's end. We will try to get her on line as soon as possible, and we'll continue the session. In the meantime, maybe I would like to repeat what the doctor said about the COVID vaccination. I give it to you as points, as best as that I could remember. Her claims are that the vaccination is safe, and the benefits of having yourself vaccinated is far better and greater than the risks that you may suffer because of the vaccination. So that is one point that she has told, and she has constantly been talking about the need for using masks, not just cloth mask, at least a 3-layer cloth mask. And if you're finding N95 difficult to wear and use, you should at least wear a cloth mask was something that she was repeatedly saying, and your hand hygiene is important and social distancing is important as well. So we still are following what we've been following in the last 1 year. So these are some important points that she had shared, and the other protocols of the gaps that you need to maintain between the two vaccination doses is also quite important for you to remember and vaccinate yourself on time. So these are some of the points that were shared by the doctor. So we'll just try and get the doctor back online. Just hang on there for a moment. Yogita, I believe you're getting in touch with the doctor right now.
We are reaching out to her. Just give us a couple of minutes, please.
In the meantime, I would answer Mr. Maleshwar Rao's question because I'm pretty familiar with what the doctor might say. He has asked if he can, go do cycling without wearing a mask. There have been several questions on whether running can be done, walking can be done early in the morning without wearing mask. Last week, the doctor had answered this question by saying that if you're doing cycling or running or walking in an area where there is nobody around, you can still remove your mask and do it. But when you're nearing an area where there are people around you, the idea is to better mask up and stay safe. So this is one question that I would answer from the input that I received from the doctor last week. And
The doctor has been having a technical glitch. She's trying to connect back. Kindly bear with us. We will connect back in a couple of seconds, please. We do have some more questions.
Yeah, we
will try and connect back. Just give us some time.
Yeah, another 40 more questions, all interesting ones, which would give us a good perspective of what the disease is all about and how we will be able to manage it.
I think between last Friday and today, we have been able to answer close to 80 questions, Gopi. I think most of our doubts and what are myths that we had, I think doctor has been very beautifully explaining it to us. We hope we are able to connect with her again. Just give us some more time.
Hello.
Yes, doctor.
So sorry. I had a network issue. Yeah. Can we continue?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Thanks for joining in, and of course, the happy news is none of us dropped off, so we're still waiting for you to get back and
yeah,
the questions. So the numbers remain straight. Okay, let me get back to where I left it. We spoke about the reinfection.
Yes. So yeah, so reinfections can still happen. So protection at best from any infection or vaccination is for 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
Yes.
The next question is, what are the precautions we have to take post-COVID treatment? Remdesivir and dexamethasone used in treatment. We've heard there are many complications post-COVID.
Yeah, so that is not related to the medication. Post-COVID, like I said, there are a few people who go for these long-term sequelae, long COVID. It's very rare though, and all of them are manageable. If you have survived COVID, that's actually a good, that'd be a great thing. Beyond that, whatever complications are there are very, very, very rare, and mostly they are manageable. See, it's important to understand that majority of COVID is still very mild only. 80 to 85% is very mild COVID. 10%, 10 to a max of 15% will get hospitalized, and very small percentage will need ICU admission. So it's still most of the time, it's not something to worry about if you on a personal level if you get the infection, but since you know the scale at which the wave is going, what is important is that you prevent other members of your family who are more vulnerable from getting very seriously infected. And now, especially since we are having so many cases, 3 lakhs per day is you can't really imagine. So just by the sheer magnitude of cases, we are actually seeing younger individuals also getting sicker, needing hospitalization, ventilation. So that is something that we are seeing now. Even children are mostly completely very mild cases, but few of them do ultimately end up in the hospital. So the spectrum of infection is still the same from the first wave to the second. It's just that total numbers are much more. So there's nothing different now than last year.
Okay.
In terms of single, like how one person might respond to the disease.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it necessary to have CRP protein checked before vaccination?
No. That is one WhatsApp message. I think that is, even I got it from a lot of people. That's there's no absolutely no evidence based to that. Please don't get your CRP, and unless you want to waste some money getting a blood test, don't do it.
Okay. The next question is, I was COVID positive in Jan 21. I still feel weakness while going up the stairs, and a bit of a breathing problem persists. Please suggest, should I go for the test again?
No. This is not COVID per se. This is again that post-COVID sequelae that some people have. So probably you had quite a bit of lung damage during the COVID, so the lungs will take some time to recover. Until that happens, there will be some symptoms. So I would recommend that you see a chest physiotherapist and do some breathing exercises, do pranayama, and you know those things actually help in these cases where it will help your lungs to expand better and heal quicker. So it's nothing to worry about. It's not COVID again. It's just the sequelae of COVID. Unless you have a fever again, in which case it could be a reinfection. These things are expected in some people. It can last for up to 3-4 months. After that, you should be okay. But in the process, it's good. It's important to do what you can to improve your lung function.
Okay. The next again, what has been on people's mind, out of the foreign vaccines in pipeline, which one is the best, Moderna, Pfizer or Sputnik?
All the three have extremely good data that is published in very high reputed journals. NEJM and Lancet both have papers of all the three vaccines of their phase 3 data. Recently, the US released their real world data also overall. It's not specific to vaccine. So US has used Pfizer and Moderna mainly. So they vaccinated some 77 million people, and after full course of vaccination, only about 5,000 got COVID. So I would say that those numbers are really excellent. So, you know, again, Pfizer had a reported 95% efficacy, Moderna had 94, Sputnik had 91.5 in the Lancet paper. So they're all excellent vaccines. So go for any of them. There's nothing to really compare. I think the US had some reports of more side effects more commonly seen with Moderna than Pfizer, I believe. But then efficacy wise, side effects are expected for most vaccines. Efficacy wise, they're excellent. So you saw the news of Israel also recently. They had a huge spike earlier in the year, and now they have come down to less than 200 cases a day. So that is entirely Pfizer. I mean, I'm not saying that Pfizer is the best vaccine, but then Israel used only Pfizer, and probably just by vaccinating more than half of their population, 60% of the population got vaccinated very soon, really well scaled up, and they've brought down infections to a real all-time low at the moment. So, and Pfizer, of course, has documented efficacy against the UK variant also. So all those vaccines are excellent. So you can go for any of them.
All right. Is it necessary to stop clopidogrel tablet before taking vaccine, especially Covishield?
No. There is no need to stop blood thinners. If you're really worried of it, maybe 1 day, 2 days before the day and on the day, but it's not really necessary. It's more important to continue all your medication. If you know, I don't know, like for what reason you're taking aspirin or clopidogrel, but probably it's for good reason. So it's important not to stop those medications. Just by vaccination is not going to be of, it's not going to cause any excess bleeding because of the vaccination. So you need not stop those things.
Will COVID-19 survive in water, and will it transmit through water?
By drinking water, no.
Okay. What about swimming pools or?
See, swimming pools, obviously, again, it's where people are also there. The people are around you, and you know, it's more to do with the aerosols that the swimming pool will produce by people swimming around you, right? If it's a single pool, only one person is using it, that's not a problem. But multiple people using the same pool, yes, there is an infection of getting it from another person, but that's not because you drank the water.
Okay.
It's more because of being in the vicinity of other people.
Okay. I am under 45 years of age, have not taken the vaccine. How can I be prepared in case I test positive for COVID-19? What should be the home remedies?
I think now it's 23rd April. So from 1st May onwards, India has opened up vaccinations for all age groups above the age of 18. So the first thing that you should do is get yourself enlisted and get the vaccine. Even if you're only 40 years of age. Until then, masking and social distancing. And even after that, masking and social distancing, to be very precise.
Okay. The next question is, my whole family got infected during the first wave in August-September 2020. What is the possibility of reinfection? Does the natural antibodies still persist? Please elaborate.
It may be persistent, but there is nothing to say that you will not get reinfected if you are completely reducing your guard and going out without a mask. And if you're going to literally sniff the virus, you can get reinfected. But usually reinfections tend to be milder than the first insult. The second time around, the older antibodies offer some protection, even if there is no antibody titer. If they had completely waned off also, you might have only a milder form of the disease. But then what I would say is, don't go sniffing around for the virus just because you know that you've recovered from COVID and you're not going to get it again. That's not the thing. You can get reinfected, especially August means there's more than 6 months are over. So you may be susceptible to another infection also.
Okay.
I can't tell you a single figure, but obviously if you are having a very high risk exposure after 6 months of recovery, there is every chance that you can get it.
Okay. If infection code rads 6, what does the severity mean?
That is the CT severity score, and it is a combination of signs that are seen on this thing. So I don't think this is the forum to comment on, CORAD scores and CT severity scores. Individually, you should discuss with the doctor if you have a certain CT scan and score of how severe it is, depending on your symptoms. It's a combination of things. There's no one single thing that will say that you have more severe disease compared to someone else.
All right. The next again is a habitual question. Can liquor be taken after vaccination?
Yes, you should celebrate, I think.
That's very heartening.
Yeah, nothing against alcohol or anything before or after vaccination.
All right. My relative is COVID positive and I visited him at a hospital. I saw him from a distance of 3 feet by wearing 2 N95 masks, gloves and sanitizer. I do not have symptoms. Should I get tested?
It's a very, very, very low risk exposure that you had. So I would say no need to get tested. Just watch out for symptoms. If you don't get sick for the next week to 10 days, there's absolutely no reason to worry about. So 2 N95s, and it's a very, very low risk exposure. Don't worry about it.
Okay. The next question is about, do obese men or women, are they prone to get COVID infection more than normal people of normal?
Getting the infection is common to everyone. Like anybody can get infected. Generally, people who are who have comorbidities like hypertension, diabetes, obesity, they're all lifestyle illness. They're all basically non-communicable diseases that we call as lifestyle-based disorders. They all tend to have more severe disease. It's not that someone who is obese and hypertensive will 100% have a bad turn of events, but then they are more likely to be getting more severe disease due to that infection.
All right. On what symptoms should one start taking antiviral medicine like favipiravir? What are the side effects?
Yeah. The favipiravir, remdesivir, none of these you should self-medicate. All of those things are only administered in the hospital. Can you just give me a moment, please?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, none of those things, favipiravir, none of those things you should self-medicate. You won't probably able to get it also. Favipiravir, I think recently there was one paper of how it may be more useful for COVID, but it's not something that you should probably go out and try to get for yourself. They're all meant for only severely infected people with high viral loads. So, yeah.
The next question is, can I take vaccine if my BP is 160 by 108? No tablets taken.
Why not? You, I think you should definitely control your hypertension. But I mean, as such, hypertension is not a contraindication for vaccination, but it's always good to keep all these things in check, especially in a pandemic. If the best thing that you can do for protecting yourself from severe COVID is to keep your BP, sugar, and physical activity levels, everything at check, so that even if you get infected, it won't be a very severe disease. So as such, for vaccination, BP, there's no particular contraindication, but in the interest of your health, especially now in vaccination centers, there is a lot of crowding, and people in a day 100 people can get vaccinated in each center. So going to a vaccination center itself is actually a risky exposure, especially if you are not adequately masked, and if it's a small room, a lot of people getting vaccinated at the same time. So even at the center of vaccination, there is a chance that you can get infected. So at that point, you shouldn't have a BP of 160 to 100. That's definitely not something that you should be having. So definitely control your BP and get vaccinated.
Okay. The next question is from.
Control your BP means you should be on adequate medication.
Okay. The next question is from a male 25 years of age who has tested positive in the last 1 week. Question is, and is now having issues while climbing stairs. So is it mandatory? 2 questions. Is it mandatory to take a CT scan? Next is, can the vaccine be taken now?
Whether he needs a CT scan will be evaluated by his practitioner, by the physician. And if he has tested positive just a week back, vaccine should be delayed for at least 4 to 6 weeks. That is what the government guidelines also say. And now taking vaccine is not going to cure this particular symptoms that he has now of COVID. So vaccine is for getting protection from further infections, new infections. So whether he needs a CT scan needs to be decided by the physician who is treating him.
Okay. Is turmeric milk helpful in reducing CRP?
No idea. Turmeric has medicinal properties that some of them are scientifically proven. So turmeric milk is also very soothing for your throat, which is my personal experience. Beyond that, I don't think there is any study which shows that turmeric milk reduces CRP.
Okay. The next question is a 34-year-old male has symptoms and was under isolation, but now okay.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that. 34-year-old, sorry?
34-year-old male who had symptoms and was under isolation, and he is now okay, but could not get tested due to the testing facility limitation. Can I go for vaccination on 1st May?
When was the infection? When was a possible infection which was untested? So it depends on that. So if it has been 4 to 6 weeks after that illness, whatever illness that was is over, he can go and get the vaccine.
Okay. The next question is this person is under home quarantine taking treatment for the last 8 days and getting better now. His son and spouse got COVID positive today. Is there any chance of secondary infection of COVID again to me due to my son or my spouse?
No. Definitely not. Zero chance. So basically that infection went to them from you, most likely. That is how it happened. And the same strain you will not get reinfected in such a short duration. So the same strain will protect you from another infection for 3 to 6 months. So you can be around them safely, no problem. Take care of them.
Okay. The next person, Mr. Pramod, would like to know why young people are getting affected more with this wave than last time.
So there are two schools of thought for that. Definitely we are seeing more numbers of younger patients in the hospital now than last year. But again, the denominator is huge. So last year, say 1% of those 1% of the young population was getting hospitalized. Last year, mostly all the youngsters were staying at home, working from home, not going out. This time it's not been like that. Completely everyone had down their guard, gone out, partied and everything. So we are seeing a lot more young people getting infected. So as a proportion of young people infected, then now the ones that end up in the hospital, maybe that proportion is still the same. That is what the ICMR also says. So the proportion of young people getting hospitalized last year was 31%, now it's 32%. So it's not significantly different. But the overall numbers of people who got infections is much higher. So that is the reason why we are seeing. So that is one school of thought, which I also believe is true. Other school of thought, yes, probably this new wave is infecting more younger people, causing more severe disease. That is yet to be proven, and there's yet to be a reasoning for that also.
Okay, doctor.
Sorry about that. Yes.
No issues. The next question is, out of 4 members at home, 2 have been tested positive, while the other 2 are negative. Should we wait for symptoms or should we get them tested now?
That is, I mean, you can take a call actually. If the other 2 members who are uninfected belong to a high risk group, I mean, if they are older with comorbidities, it is good to get them tested so that, you are sort of ready to get them a bed in case admission is required. So that is one reason why we tell it's good to get people, especially who are of a high risk, even if they're asymptomatic, because they had a high risk exposure. If they have a test in hand tomorrow, if they need admission, it's good to have that positive report so they can directly be admitted into the COVID ward. So that is just, that is just to be ready for the worst case scenario sort of thing. If they're otherwise healthy and completely asymptomatic, they're not belonging to any high risk group, no need to get them tested. They probably may have gotten it also, they may be positive also, but it's okay. I mean, you can just wait and watch.
Okay. Is it advisable to take vaccination for people with SLE?
Yeah, SLE, if you are specifically on very high level immunosuppression, you need to again consult your doctor, but SLE as such is not a contraindication. But if you are on very high level steroids for suppressing any particular episode of SLE, it's an individual thing, but SLE as a condition is not a contraindication for vaccine. You can take it.
Okay. Is there any side effect of using excessive sanitizers?
No. Using means on the hand, right?
Yeah, on the hand is what I assume too.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah. There is this, I'm not too clear about this question. Why is sudden deaths happening during the COVID treatment and post-COVID treatment? Any symptoms we can observe if D-dimer is more than acceptable limit? Please explain.
Just a second. Yes. So sudden deaths following vaccination and infection, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, during COVID treatment and post-COVID treatment, not during vaccination.
They're not sudden deaths. No, some people don't do well with, there is a 1 to 2% mortality associated with COVID. So 1 to 2% of those who get infected can die of COVID. Typically that is not the definition of sudden death. So it's usually an expected death once if the lung damage is so severe and the body cytokine storm is very severe. 1 to 2% of that is the expected death rate actually. So D-dimers and those things are all predictors of. So there are a lot of investigations for people who are admitted in the hospital that are done as part of the management protocol. Some of them do have some of them will show whether it's not a single investigation. Actually, it's a combination of tests that are done to assess the severity of the disease, and appropriate managements are done on an individual patient basis. So there's no single marker that will say that this patient can go for very severe or death, more than some other investigation. So it's again an individual patient to patient basis, which is done as part of the hospital management protocol. Okay.
Is it advisable to take vaccination for people with ankylosing spondylitis?
Yeah, similar to SLE, ankylosing spondylitis is also an autoimmune disease. So as such, for that, there is no contraindication. But again, if they are on immunosuppression, since it's an autoimmune, all of these SLE, ankylosing spondylitis, rheumatoid arthritis, they're all a spectrum of autoimmune diseases. So some people will be on some extensive immunosuppression because there was a certain episode in the recent past. But if they're not currently on such kind of immunosuppression, if the physician says, okay, it's okay to take it, then they can take it.
Yeah. Mr. Magesh would like to know that there is a message roaming in social media that before vaccination, you need to take a CRP test.
I think I just answered that. No, there's no basis to that.
All right. After taking first dose, 2 days it was good, and later on I got I think it is toothache, and in the case of tooth it got damaged, and it is, should I remove it? That's the question.
I don't think the toothache is related to the vaccine at all.
Okay.
You probably had some bad cavity or caries, or you should get it checked out by a dentist. It is absolutely unrelated to the vaccine.
Okay, again, this is a question you answered, but I think we can give it another answer. After getting positive and treated, when can I take the vaccine? Yeah, so 4 to 6 weeks is the dictum, but you can delay it up to 3 months also.
There's no single recommendation like that. It's an arbitrary period that has been given, about 4 to 6 weeks, even up to 12 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, maximum up to 12 weeks you can delay and you can take the vaccine. Because usually after infection, like I told you, minimum of 3 months you're protected even by the infection. The antibodies that you get after the infection itself will protect you for another 3 months. So you can delay the vaccination also till then.
Yeah, surprisingly, you answered the next question because it says after infection, how long does the antibody stay in?
Yeah. So minimum of 3 months. Minimum of 3 months is definitely robust. You will have protection. Beyond that, it starts falling at different rates for different people. Some people may be immediately susceptible. Some people can have protection for even longer, 6 months to 8 months also. But then up to 3 months, usually there is very good data to suggest that 100% of the people will be protected from a further infection.
Okay. Can mother and child, the child is 8-year-old, who have tested positive stay together, or should they remain in isolation? Also, the child has been tested positive through rapid antigen test, as RT-PCR is taking 1 week for results. Do we need to pursue RT-PCR too?
Actually, antigen tests are a very good test. If they are positive, it is positive. There is no doubt about it. Sometimes antigen test may be falsely negative. So that is when you need to confirm with an RT-PCR whether it's actually negative or it is the antigen test's lack of sensitivity. But if an antigen test is positive, it's positive. There's no doubt about it. And this mother and child obviously probably got the infection from the same, they both have the same infection. So there's no need to separate the two of them. You can keep them together for isolation, no problem.
Okay, this is one question whether which you answered in the last week, whether we can change the brand of vaccine after the first dose.
No, you can't change. You have to take the same. There is no, the only the recommendation from every health body is to take the same vaccine that you've taken for the first dose.
Okay, is it advisable to have antibody tested before going for vaccination, as some are saying if there is antibody, there is no need for a vaccination?
There is no recommendation like that actually. The thing is, if irrespective of your prior antibody status, the recommendation is to go and take the vaccine only. But if you have some pressing matter that is preventing you from getting a vaccination immediately, you may probably take an antibody to see if it's positive. At least you know that for some more time you have some protection. But then there is absolutely no guideline that will tell you that you should take an antibody, and if it is positive, don't take the vaccine. If it's negative, take the vaccine. Nothing like that. Irrespective of prior infection, you're supposed to take the vaccination.
Okay. Prakash would like to know how long should he wait before he starts his regular walking, yoga and workouts after the vaccination?
After vaccination, maybe just give it a day or two so that the initial fevers or whatever pains and all will subside, and then you can resume, no problem. But going out, if you're talking about a group workout in a gym, that's again a little unsafe, I would say, irrespective of how many days after vaccination. If it's going to be alone, if you're going out for a jog alone, it's no problem. You can resume in a day or two.
All right. What is the probability to get COVID the second time?
Already answered, no, many times.
Yes.
Reinfection. Yeah.
We will let it pass.
Yeah.
Most of the questions I'm seeing are what we've already answered.
Okay.
Every summer season, will COVID-19 start spreading faster?
No, yeah, that's a good question.
Anything about weather?
We really don't know. So with the first wave, actually, many of the experts predicted that there will be a second wave, even though we saw towards the end of 2020 and especially in the beginning of 2020, Jan, Feb, there were so few cases in India. But still at that time, there were some experts who predicted that there is going to be a second wave. So while at the same time, some experts predicted that there is enough herd immunity and that is why we are not seeing any more cases. So probably the worst is over. But then we saw we are still seeing this huge spike in cases. So the wiser thing to do would be to anticipate that there will be a further wave again next year. I mean, if we are able to get over this wave also effectively, the wise thing to do is, since what we have learned from history is that it can happen again. The only hope is that with extensive vaccinations and social distancing and masking and everything, you bring the virus down to its knees. Rather, you bring down transmission events to as much of a nil as possible so that it is completely eradicated. So until that happens, until there is even a small focus of the virus left, it will come up again, mutate, and then cause new peaks again and again every year. So as responsible citizens, we should do our best to use all the three arms that are available to us. And hope that the virus completely gets eradicated, and until then we'll need to keep on following all of these measures. So next year again, if we forget about this wave and start going out doing public rallies and stuff, then that is very foolish behavior by humans in general, that it's just going to come back again.
Okay, my son is 8 years old, has sensitive airways. He has to be given nebulizer on few occasions. Now he's on Astalin 250, 2 puffs twice a day. What precautions should be taken to safeguard him?
The same thing. I mean, especially since he has probably an asthma sort of syndrome, reactive airway disease, he should be protected from getting COVID. So keep him indoors and keep him away from crowds, and you should be safe. Yeah.
An interesting question. There is a belief that hand sanitizer reduces immunity from the human body or causes cancer.
Both are nonsense.
Okay.
Yes.
Those whose lungs are badly affected, how much time would they take to completely recover?
It depends, from patient to patient. Usually they will recover completely. Some symptoms might still persist, right? I told you, like for about 2 to 3 months, even it can persist. They can have some difficulty in breathing, especially when they're climbing up the stairs, etc. There can still be some trouble, but they will usually make a full recovery soon.
One beautiful question one person is asked: does smokers have less chance of getting corona than compared to non-smokers? Is it a myth, doctor?
Yes, it's a myth, and in fact, smokers tend to have smoker's lung, which is some level of obstruction, chronic obstruction, etc. that can be there, which actually predisposes to them to get more severe disease. Okay. So smokers like to think that
they have immunity, autoimmunity.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the next person seems to be a little worried that he had, while taking a patient to the hospital on a bike or a two-wheeler, and the patient wearing a mask, and after getting tested positive, will the driver who was riding the bike, is there a possibility of getting transmitted during that travel? Is there a possibility?
He rode a bike with someone who tested positive, is it?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there could be, like they would have spoken to each other without masks, etc. So there is probably a chance that there has been some exposure. So just watch out for any symptoms for a week to 10 days, at least. The quarantine recommendation is for 14 days, but for a week to 10 days, if you don't get any symptoms, you're probably not infected.
Okay.
But if you're more worried, you can always get a test on day 7. Day 7, you get a test even if you don't have symptoms, and if it's negative, then you're safe.
Okay, doctor. So if members in a family have COVID, what is the possibility that the viral load would increase among the other family members? Is that
those who are
already
positive? Huh?
What, ma'am?
Those who are already positive, will the viral load increase because the
only somebody in the family has a viral infection, was positive. So is there a possibility that the viral load increases among the others also, is the question?
I don't understand why they're saying viral load as such.
That's what I'm also a little confused.
Yeah, if there is one person in the house who is infected, there is a very, very high probability that the others also will get infected. That is a definite thing. Nothing to do with viral load.
So maybe they are wanting to check about false negative and things like that. So is there a possibility they will still carry the load and still not get tested? I mean, they may be asymptomatic.
Yeah, that spectrum is always wide. Their infections can be asymptomatic to very symptomatic, but being in the same household as one person who is infected is a very high risk exposure. So until proved otherwise, you should consider yourself infected only and be isolated.
Okay, doctor. So most likely chances of spreading COVID-19 is through touching objects and are through close human interventions. Is it serious through objects touching, namely newspaper, milk, paper, door handles, etc.?
Yeah, again, that's something that I have told many times. It's person to person is the most important one. Objects are not so important. As long as you are doing hand hygiene regularly, they don't pose a high risk.
Okay, doctor. And children staying at home has been a very difficult during these times. So can they go out and play with each other? Children below the age of 12.
How can I say that that's definitely not a safe thing? Because especially now with the second wave, there is such a huge number of cases that are there. I think they can play another day, not now. Yeah.
Okay, doctor. So, will you advise some precautions they take before they actually go out to meet some of their friends at least?
If it is really inevitable, they should be masked throughout. But how will you enforce a 10-year-old to be masked? I mean, they should be really, really obedient. It's very difficult to enforce children to play with each other while wearing masks all the time. So at this point, until the second wave comes down to at least some baseline levels, I think it's better to not, especially if there are elders in the house, and not just elders, even the kids, you don't want them to get infected. So many kids have gotten infected now in the second wave. So I think it's more important to protect your child from getting COVID rather than, letting them go out and play.
Okay, doctor.
Yeah.
So then this next person is having an allergic issue, a problem. So can I go for vaccination? If yes, which is the best, either Covaxin or Covishield? I think this question is coming again and again. So any allergic?
Either of them is okay. Allergy is not contraindication for vaccination unless they have been allergic to another vaccine in the past.
Okay, doctor. I think we are getting more questions, but we have taken questions.
Everything has been answered. I think
yes, doctor. So the repeat of questions, especially on which is Covaxin is okay or Covishield is okay, but I think you have beautifully answered all our questions the last 2 days, the last week and this week put together. And Gopi,
yes,
you there?
Yeah, thank you.
We will end the Q&A now.
Yes, please. Please proceed.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, doctor. Thank you so much for patiently answering all the questions. I know that we've repeated several questions, but you were patient enough to keep giving the answers again. I think that clarity is required, especially in testing times that we are passing through right now. And a very great service, because you have reached out to several of our employees who will in turn go and tell their families and friends on what they have learned today. So thank you once again for being with us subsequently the 2 weeks and giving us all this clarity. Thanks once again to you, and thanks to Chandru also, who had helped organize this event. Thanks to the tech team who supported this as well at the back end. Thank you all. And until we meet next week with the new topic, this is Gopi Kannan signing off from all of you. Thank you. Bye-bye.